My wife and I, both mid-30s, have been happily married for 9 years. We don't have any kids and don't want kids. We had the what-if talk before getting married. She told me she would want to have an abortion if she ever got pregnant. Yesterday my wife told me she's 9 weeks pregnant. She's on the pill, but accidents happen. She said she wants to carry to term and give the baby up for adoption. Naturally, I was surprised by the news and her change of mind. I asked her if she considered getting an abortion. She said she had, but she doesn't want to because she feels a bond to the fetus. She told me she has been researching adoption and learned that the local adoption agencies only accept birth mothers who are okay with having an open adoption. I told her I wasn't really comfortable with this and asked her if she would have an abortion. She started crying and spent the night at her sister's place. She won't answer my phone calls. I'm uncomfortable with this for a few reasons. I was adopted at birth and my adoptive parents weren't the best. I know this isn't the case for everyone who was adopted, but I can't help but have a negative view about it. A few years ago I tried to find my biological parents to learn my medical history, but I couldn't. I was sore about it for a little while, but it doesn't bother me anymore. My wife is aware of these points. I just don't want to pass on my genes because they're essentially a mystery to me. I also don't like kids. My wife said she actually would prefer to keep the baby, but she knows I wouldn't want to. So she said having an open adoption sounded like a reasonable compromise. I understand why she thinks that, but I still don't want to have any biological children, regardless of how much / little I would be involved in raising him or her. My wife takes birth control for reasons other than contraception. If she ever wanted to stop taking it, I would support her 100%. I realize that I'm an idiot for not getting a vasectomy a long time ago though. It honestly never occurred to me until now. I think because my wife has always been on birth control and said she would have an abortion. I see now that it was irresponsible of me to not get one regardless. I'm going to get snipped. She and I talked, it was emotional for both of us, but no voices were raised. I apologized for putting her in this position by being an idiot and not getting a vasectomy earlier. I also apologized if she felt like I was pressuring her when I asked her to have an abortion. I didn't mean to pressure her, but I know words aren't always received as we intended. She said she felt pressured a little, but forgave me because she knows I was totally caught off guard. She apologized for having a change of heart regarding abortion. She said she was really surprised by her own feelings and hopes I don't feel like she tricked me. I don't. We mutually agreed that it would be good to spend one more night apart to really think. We've always have a strong marriage, and we're both committed to working through this, whatever that may look like. I'm a 30-year-old male and my best friend got married last week. I just bought a house and my wife is expecting our son in November. So I let him know I was limited in what I could contribute financially, but did tell him I would try my best. So, I went to the bachelor party in Maine, I rented the tux, and paid for mine and my wife's dinner at the rehearsal dinner. I also had a gift of $300 that I was going to give them, but we will get to why I didn't give it to them. His now wife, then fiancé, texted me multiple times a day with updates fine. I didn't always respond and it got to the point where if I didn't respond at least once a day, I'd get a call from my buddy. I have a full-time job and am redoing some rooms in my house, so I'm busy. She texted me for the following reasons. 1. My wife was not allowed to talk about our pregnancy at all. She didn't want anyone to focus on that more than her, the bride. 2. She was not going to order special food for my wife, no one asked her to. My wife was fine with whatever she was going to be served. 3. I was not helping the groom enough, he had to help her with favors, seating charts and programs. So I had to help him with those things, according to her. She also said to get ready to help with thank you notes after the wedding. 4. She said if I was a true best man, I would offer to pay for the bar bill. I don't even know what that means. 5. She had to read to approve my speech before the rehearsal dinner and wanted to be included as much as my buddy. She told me to make up things if I had to. I was also not allowed to include anyone but the two of them and no inside jokes or stories about my buddy that didn't include her. 6. Her last text said to tell my wife to keep it together and not make a pregnancy scene during the wedding. Also, she wanted her to choose a dress that downplayed her pregnancy as much as possible. I was just so aggravated. I spoke to my friend to see if he could reason with her. He told me to just play ball on this one, it's her day, and to cut him a break, because he'd be dealing with her nonsense for the rest of his life. I was annoyed but calmed down. The day of, all the bride and my buddy do is scold me, berate me, and bark orders. I head down to the bar for a drink. The bride's mother is there and warns me not to get drunk because I've ruined her daughter's day enough. I didn't give them the card with the cash, and in the speech, I used my friend's exact wording about having to deal with her nonsense for the rest of his life. I wished them the best and told him I'd always be there for him, especially during the divorce. I am a 33 years old female, have been engaged to my fiancé, 37 male, for 5 months. We don't share finance because that's what he wants. I got a raise on my salary. Now I earn 30% more than he does, and I notice that he's been using this to ask me to pay for him and his friends. Whenever I say no, or why should I pay for this, he'd respond with the 30%, that's why. He acts as if the 30% is unfair or that I'm not deserving of it. Several times he has tricked me to pay for his and his friends' meals by asking me publicly. Let me say that I'm too nice to say no. I hate confrontation, especially when we're at a public place like a restaurant, so I just grin and pay. Last Tuesday, he asked me to join him and his buddies for dinner. I told him from the start I wasn't paying for their food and he shouldn't expect me to. He said he got this and no worries. We got to the restaurant, met his friends, ordered food, and in the middle of the meal he leaned in and whispered that I would be paying for everything he and his friends ordered. I got so mad I whispered back, no. But he probably relied on me not causing a scene in public and in front of his friends. He said, you have enough money, you could pay for everyone's food, 30%, remember? I was fuming inside. Instead of reacting negatively and losing my temper, I waited till the bills arrived. They were already split from the start when we first ordered. I paid for mine, then I excused myself to the restroom. I then sneaked out from there, got into my car and went home. I started getting phone calls from my fiancé, then texts asking where I was. I texted back saying I didn't appreciate how he put me in this situation and basically tricking me into paying for his and his friends' food. I told him I went home, then stopped replying. An hour later he came and started yelling at me, calling me selfish, irrational, cheapskate and childish for sneaking out like that and leaving him stuck with a bill he could not pay. He had to call his brother for help. We had a loud argument, then he walked out. His friends didn't speak to me on this, but he told me they're disappointed in my behavior and are telling him to take time and reflect on the type of woman he's gonna be married to. He said that because the restaurant wasn't expensive, then I could have just paid. He admitted not telling me about it till later, knowing I'd refuse. He still thinks my reaction was childish and unacceptable. Almost all the marriages in my family have been arranged marriages. My mom's marriage to my bio dad was an arranged marriage, but it ended up in a messy divorce and him completely abandoning us before I was even born. My mom had a love marriage the second time, despite the disapproval of her family, and has been much happier with my stepdad than she probably would have ever been with my bio dad. Because of this, my mom has always been very adamant that she would not try to force us, my siblings and I, into arranged marriages despite what the rest of our family thought. I've been with my fiancé for 3 years now. We got engaged 2 months ago. He's met my parents and siblings, but as far as the majority of my extended family were concerned, I was single until 2 months ago. Early last year, my fiancé dropped me off home after work one day and my uncle was there. My uncle is the oldest sibling my mom has, so he's seen as the head of the family. He thinks he has a say in what the rest of us do. It was obvious my uncle was pissed, and he ended up grilling my fiancé, and I assume he met his standards. A lot of arranged marriages are about what both families can gain from one another, so he told my mom to get us married quickly. He wanted to make it look like we had an arranged marriage before the rest of our family found out. My mom ignored him and told us to keep dating if it's what we wanted. Over the past year, he's mentioned me getting married to my mom every single time he's spoken to her. Apparently, my uncle assumed just because he'd given the order that we were going to get married soon. He told my cousin, his daughter, that I had agreed to an arranged marriage, and because I had and she was older, she should agree to the match he'd found her. My cousin never mentioned this to me, but she did agree to marry the man my uncle found for her. They got married late last year. They haven't had a good marriage and my cousin is very unhappy. Her husband is incredibly controlling and hardly ever lets her go anywhere without him or a member of his family. Last week, she was over at my house when my fiancé came over to drop some of the clothes I'd left at his place over. When I told my family about my engagement, they all assumed it was an arranged marriage and I didn't bother clarifying because it really isn't anyone's business. You don't tend to do sleepovers if you're having an arranged marriage, so my cousin knew immediately it wasn't what she assumed. She started asking me questions about my relationship and I answered honestly. She got really angry at me and kept demanding to know why I didn't tell her about him. The thing is, I'm very close to this cousin, but I also know how our family is about dating and I didn't want my male cousins trying to strong-arm my fiancé. They've jokingly threatened this before. She pretty much blamed me for her arranged marriage and said she only agreed because she thought I was going to have one too, and if I had told her I had a boyfriend, she would have had the courage to stand up to her family. She hasn't spoken to me since. I do feel bad for her. I know how unhappy she is, but if she had mentioned what my uncle told her earlier, I would have clarified. I don't want this to be the end of our relationship, but I don't know what I can do to fix this.